Hi, I'm here this afternoon for a chat with Cael Chappell, the founder and owner of Baskets of Africa. You're one of the founding members of the Fair Trade Federation, right?
I don't think I'm a founding member. I've been a member for 17 or 18 years. I can't actually quite keep track, but I think it had been around for a couple years before I joined.
Well, Cael has been my fair trade mentor since before I started HoonArts. So he's always my go-to person on how to do fair trade the right way. So you were one of the people I wanted to interview about your story and fair trade. So that's why we're here this afternoon.
Wonderful, thank you.
Now, I know that you work with, how many countries in Africa do you work with?
17. Right now we're at 17.
17 countries. How did you start working with Africa, and where did you start in Africa?
I started 29 years ago. I started working in an African art gallery because I had a very unique skill that they needed, which is I could type. So I started typing for an African art gallery and worked my way up through inventory and doing large-scale museum exhibits and all sorts of things. But fairly quickly, they started sending me to Africa because I could figure out how to source, how to export, how to package so we didn't have damage, logistics basically of how to get things from Africa to the US and then out to customers from there. So I had a pretty early exposure. I was 19 when I started working for that company.
I didn't realize you were that young.
Yes, I started working and I was making slightly more than minimum wage at this company. And as you know, but others may not, I grew up very, very poor and homeless for years at times. And so when they offered me, I believe it was $5 an hour, I jumped at it. So I tried to do that in school for a semester, but dropped out of college and just started this adventure and sort of exposure to Africa. I really didn't know anything about Africa before then, and I didn't know anything about art, and I still don't really know anything about art, but I did spend more than a decade or so there working in an African art gallery. So that got me going to Africa and learning a lot about small business, especially a lot about how I would not want to run a business, and how to, go to Africa and find things and bring them back, and a lot about quality and what American consumers might like compared to European consumers, compared to local markets. So although I like to focus on all indigenous design, I don't design anything here. We don't have any designers in the West. Everything's designed by the people who make it. So indigenous design. I still kind of look and have an eye for, well, I think customers will like this, so we'll go in that direction and not maybe some other directions that they're doing for European markets or for local markets.
Yeah,
so,
at HoonArts, I've seen that a big part of my job has been providing feedback to my artists who come from a culture where there's no such thing as too many colors, too many designs. The busier, the better. Yes,
lots of bright colors. Some of our folks love pink and orange, and that doesn't necessarily go with the home decor here a lot of the time. So we do give a lot of feedback. And of course, over now 18 years since I started Baskets of Africa, you develop a very close relationship with the producers. And basically, I just give them feedback on what is selling and what customers are telling us. Customers, when they keep saying, we want to order this type of basket, but we don't want any pink on it, I send that back and tell them, to please try to avoid pink. And you still always get the pink. It always keeps coming, but you know, the quantity of it maybe gets reduced.
Yeah,
So,
the orange and black combination is very popular in Central Asia.
yes,
So,
which is great. Which is great for October 31st here in the U.S. Yes, exactly. So that kind of feedback. We try to avoid orange and black. We try to avoid red and green because then you have something seasonal. I try to avoid everything that's seasonal or fashionable. As you know, that was some of my initial advice to you, which my advice is always worth what you paid for it. So take it if you want or leave it.
It's terrific advice because I see with HoonArts, our design cycle is so long that there's no way that I could possibly keep up with seasonal trends.
Right. You try to focus on timeless design.
Yes.
And I have found over the years, now almost 30 years, working in African art and craft, that timeless design is usually, for me, I think, traditional, indigenous design.
Mm-hmm.
That's timeless because that's what they've been doing for the last, thousands of years. So with just a little bit of feedback and guidance, that's kind of what we've done.
Color selections.
Yeah, right. I wish I had some background or degree in art or something and knew about colors.
Me too. I can tell you, a background in law is not exactly great training.
My major background was logistics, computers. I did everything for this art gallery, which grew to eventually 6 locations. And as I mentioned, doing large-scale museum exhibits across the country as fundraisers for the education programs at those museums. But I was always on the technical side. So we got a new phone system. Called Cael, come and set this up. We got a new computer. Cael, come and set this up. So I did a lot of, computer networking, voicemail system programming. Back in the days when the voicemail system used to be screwed to the wall there, I was the guy who would program it all. So I was kind of the go-to guy in this company. It was a small company that had, at the peak, 6 locations and 45 employees. And I was on call 364 days a year, every day except Christmas. So they were open.
Yeah.
And they were open from 10 to, in some cases, 9 p.m. And I had to start work by 8. So it was pretty much, that's something you do when you're young.
Yes, I remember those days.
Yes, but anyway, it got me really loving Africa, the people, the culture, the flora, the fauna, everything about Africa I find interesting and amazing to a certain degree. And I love Africa also because every day I either try to learn or I accidentally learn, something about someone or somewhere in Africa. And even after 30 years, I feel like I know about 1%.
Yeah.
It's such an incredible place with so many cultures, languages, traditions, and arts and crafts. And so I really just fell in love with Africa when I was 19, 20 years old. And now I've made so many trips. I don't know how many trips I've made into the low dozens. And I've spent somewhere in the low, single-digit numbers of years, 3-4 years maybe total in Africa. Sometimes I would go for up to 4 months at a time.
Wow.
Which was pretty tough having a young family. Now I try to go for 3 weeks or less.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to go all the way to Africa for anything less than 3 weeks. It's such a big place, and
it takes 3 days to recover from jet lag.
Oh yeah. It's on the way there, you're all energized and it's fun and exciting, but on the way back, when you come back to real life, it takes a long time to recover and kind of get back into the groove of things. But so 3 weeks is kind of the sweet spot now, where it's not too long to be away from my wife. My kids are grown; they're out at college, and eventually here, my wife will be able to travel with me. She has been to Africa, but before we met each other. And she actually had family in Africa. That was one of the things that led me to some of the first baskets in South Africa. And the traditional Zulu Ilala palm mkambas, which are a lidded, watertight basket. Mm-hmm. And from there, it just kept growing. I didn't know at the beginning, at the beginning, I love baskets. I love handwork. My dad's a woodworker. I grew up with him working in wood all my life. My mom does beadwork and jewelry and leather work. I have always grown up around handwork, making things. So I've always appreciated it. But basketry is sort of a mind-blowing amount of time, effort, skill, and love that goes into each piece. So I fell in love with baskets back when I worked at that African art gallery. So some of the groups, a couple of the groups actually, I started working with when I worked at the African art gallery. One in particular in Swaziland, which is now called Eswatini. I had known them now for, I would say, a good 25 years.
Wow.
And once I started Baskets of Africa, I knew they were the ones. They are the group in Swaziland with the, specific type of basket distinct to Swaziland and the highest quality in that country. So I've been working with them really nonstop for more than 25 years. So,
wow. So what initially inspired you to venture out and start your own business?
So the company I worked for did a very heavy, fragile product. They did Shona stone sculpture from Zimbabwe. Very difficult to handle, difficult to store, ship, everything. It was, we had to have forklifts, and it was a major, major ordeal dealing with it, just handling it. If somebody bought a large piece, I was flown to Hawaii a number of times to install, large sculptures that were 1,000, 2,000 pounds on people's properties. I've flown to a bunch of different parts of the country because I was the guy that could get things done. So they'd be like, "Oh, Cael will bring this to your house and install it for you." So
lucky you.
It was a process. I had to hire a local crew and a lot of times get a crane or a forklift or so. Honestly, after a number of years there, I started when I was very young, and I didn't feel like the message from the owners of the company that they put out to the public matched what they were actually doing in Africa. They made it sound like they were doing a lot more for the people than I learned over the years that they were. So I wanted to start something and do it my way, with the people in Africa being the priority. These folks that I worked for, they ended up, buying wine country property, and they ended up going bankrupt, driving it into the ground because of mismanagement. But in the end, I didn't feel like the people that were making the items were getting enough out of the whole relationship. So I wanted to start something and do it my way. And growing up, very poor, like I said, and I've grown up, lived without running water, without electricity, without indoor plumbing, where, my sister and I, we had to go to the stream to carry water if we're going to, cook, drink, take a bath. Once a week we start a fire and heat up enough water to take a bath, and everybody in the family, or four of us, would share the one bit of water, because you have to carry it to start with. It's a difficult life. So my first trip to Africa, I saw, wow, there is an entire continent here that I'm looking at where most of the people, or a majority of them, live that way. And I know how difficult it is because I've done it. I've been there, done that. And I just feel incredibly lucky that I was in America, where once I was sort of out of the house and working, and I had opportunities and choices that I could make to sort of work my way out of that. And in Africa, out in the countryside, they don't have those opportunities. there's really nothing going on except farming. So most of the weavers are subsistence farmers, but then by giving them an economic opportunity to earn an income, which they can then have cash to do things like pay for school fees, pay for school uniforms. That's the number one thing that they spend the money on, is supporting their children. Most of the weavers in Africa are women. There are a couple of exceptions to that, but actually there's only one exception. One of the dozens of groups that we work with, there's only one exception where it's primarily men. So basically when the mother has an income, it empowers her in the households. Yeah, she still does the bulk of the work in the farming, all the hard work too, but she suddenly has more, what's the word I'm thinking of? She has more I'm forgetting the word, but she has more say, and she has more power in the relationship and in the community, in the greater community. She's seeing like, wow, she's providing for her family by making baskets and earning money. So I felt that by doing it directly like that, I could help more people, help more children. Now after doing this for Baskets of Africa, I started in 2002. It's almost becoming multi-generational, where some of those kids are have their education now and are doing different things. Than that, their trajectory in life has changed because maybe their mom made baskets and worked with me. So it's kind of an amazing thing. And so the funny thing about why I chose baskets was because I wanted to do something primarily that was the opposite of this stone sculpture.
Yeah.
I wanted something that was lighter, easier to shape, and also that stone sculpture comes only from Zimbabwe. They do a similar type of thing in Kenya out of a softer stone called Kisi stone, but it's not the original African stone carvers are really from Zimbabwe. The Shona people have been carving in stone for more than 1,200 years.
Wow.
In fact, Zimbabwe means house of stone.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes, the Great Zimbabwe is the second largest stone ruins in Africa behind the pyramids at Giza.
Wow.
So pyramids at Giza, everybody's heard of that. Not many people have heard of the Great Zimbabwe, which is a massive stone city in southern Zimbabwe. That was about 1,200 years ago, a massive trading center. They found Ming pottery shards there and gold, all sorts of they have a long history. And at the Great Zimbabwe, they also found these iconic carved chapungu or eagle, the Zimbabwe bird they call it, which is on their money. It's on their it's the symbol of their country, the Zimbabwe bird, which is a carved stone bird from more than 1,000 years ago.
But I can see how the prospect of shipping baskets seemed.
It seemed like a good idea, but of course there are other challenges involved there. My other reason for baskets is baskets are woven everywhere by every culture at some point in their history. Baskets are like the oldest form of craft. Before pottery, there were baskets. Before baskets, there was probably cordage, which is still a type of hand weaving, making cordage. Twine or ropes to hold things. But as soon as you have that cordage, people started weaving it into baskets, burden baskets to carry things, or very quickly gathering baskets. So they weave baskets everywhere in Africa. Art has been lost by certain cultures or peoples throughout Africa, but one of my missions was, well, if I can find all the different types of unique, distinct baskets that are distinct to a certain people, culture, or country, and bring them to America and have this massive variety where everything's different, but from 100 feet away, I can look at it and say, that's from Rwanda, that's from South Africa. They're distinctive. Then by supporting that indigenous art through purchasing, then they'll continue weaving. If they can't sell baskets. They're going to weave very, very few baskets. And in the 1950s, with the advent of plastic buckets and bags, it became, I guess more like the 60s even, 60s to 70s. As it became more ubiquitous across Africa, then there was less reason to make a basket because it's very difficult, time-consuming work. So if people don't buy them, then they won't make them, and that part of their culture will be lost. So a big part of this project was the preservation of culture, economic empowerment of rural women, in particular in Africa. And then, of course, you find out things like dimensional shipping, where when you have very large items that don't weigh very much, they don't charge you by the pound, they charge you by the volume. So there are lots of things you have to just kind of figure out as you're going on, and that's our biggest challenge still today.
Yeah, you were talking about the how COVID-19 has impacted shipping rates.
Yeah, shipping rates we're seeing right now, we're seeing 300 to 400% higher shipping rates coming out of Africa, basically because mail moves on airplanes. They don't have surface mail anymore in the world like they used to. Mail moves on airplanes. Freight generally moves on airplanes or by sea. Well, when one of those pieces breaks down, which in this case it's the airlines, when people aren't flying places, airplanes are parked. Here in New Mexico, down in Roswell, we have a massive airport that's just full of planes that are parked right now. So then there's no space for cargo on the planes. This is one of the reasons why airlines started charging for baggage. Well, because they were charging for cargo, so they figured if people are going to bring 2 or 3 bags, then they should have to pay for those bags because then they can't carry the cargo. The cargo being or baskets or scarves or things from, around the world. So once that happened very early in the pandemic here, then everybody started to move to sea freight. So now the sea freight systems are overwhelmed as well. The ocean freight systems are overwhelmed. So our latest quotes we're getting as some of these countries are starting to open up in Africa, the latest quotes we're getting are that ocean freight is now more expensive than air freight used to be. Where ocean freight used to be the cheap option.
The bargain option.
There's not a cheap option anymore. And air freight, we're seeing 300 to 400%. So, we're working with every shipping method and partner possible to try to figure out how we can get things here at all. We have right now, for the last 3 months, we've had shipments paid for because we pay everything in advance. We've had shipments paid for sitting in 7 different countries that haven't been able to move. Now that they can move, now we have to make these decisions about how do we cover the cost. So adjusting pricing models and all these sorts of things, very challenging. Yeah. But also, when we ship a box of baskets out the door from here to a customer, we might have a box that weighs, say, let's see, one of our big boxes will ship to stores and shops and things. It ends up weighing about 20 to 25 pounds. Well, UPS charges us for 107 pounds or 115 pounds, something like that. They charge us for 79 pounds. They charge us for 79 pounds on that box when it actually only weighs like 20 to 25. So the dimensional shipping of baskets or anything that's big, light, and can't be crushed small is very, very, very challenging, and something I never foresaw when I started this company. I just thought, baskets are easy; they're not fragile.
The great shipping challenge is something that has dogged us at HoonArts from the very beginning. We were just discussing Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan are still shipping freight via FedEx and DHL at exorbitant prices.
Yes.
Tajikistan the airports are still closed, and the government in Tajikistan outlawed all the international shipping companies several years ago. So normally we ship cargo, but it's a private courier system, but the airports are closed. So I have products in production that as soon as they tell me they're ready, I'll pay for them, but I have no idea when they'll ship.
Yes, that's a challenge. So we have many tens of thousands of dollars, for example, sitting in Africa that we can't even sell if we could. If we did have plenty of business, we wouldn't be able to get those baskets here. Not at those prices. Now, the other big thing, there's so much uncertainty in these times, and one of the biggest uncertainties is that shipping cost. What is it going to be a year from now? What is it going to be 2 years from now? How do we adjust our pricing models so that our prices don't fluctuate too much? Because especially wholesale accounts, they don't want prices jumping up and down every time they order. So we try to remain stable with our pricing for as long as possible. We don't, do incremental changes unless we need to. But now we need to. But how much do you do? What is it going to be? We have no idea. So I think people just have to be a little understanding as we work through this. And things may get very expensive now and then hopefully go down later.
Yeah. And it's impacting every product in the world.
Yes. A lot, especially with our small businesses and, with these social justice missions of helping people in remote areas and that sort of thing. It's extra difficult for us because, we don't have major supply chains like these other companies do. That I keep seeing on the news, companies are going to need to rethink their supply chains now, with this. And it's like 100% of our products come from Africa. There's no way to rethink that. Like, we can't just have them made in Mexico instead.
Right. It sort of defeats the whole purpose.
Right. So the challenges for small business are as always much more challenging than they are for the big guys. But one way or another, we got to make it through this and get out on the other side and keep supporting people and keep them weaving baskets and keep them making things in Central Asia, because again, if they don't make them, that culture could be lost. And with basket weaving, one of the things I see a lot when the ladies are sitting around basket weaving, a lot of times there are children running around or playing with them. And it's also an opportunity when we'll frequently see them passing on oral history and tradition. Mm-hmm. And even singing and dancing. It's more than just the baskets that they're weaving. Because basket weaving is a time-intensive, usually sitting in one place, but sometimes they'll be walking around and weaving at the same time, that sort of thing. But you're not working in the field and weaving at the same time. You're sitting primarily in one place for long periods of time making things. And that just lends itself to their oral history, traditions, culture, and being able to tell stories and pass that on to their kids when they get home from school or their toddlers and that sort of thing. So
we see that in Central Asia too. The textile arts are hanging on by their fingernails because China's right there. And as we know, all fabric in the U.S., all textiles in the U.S. are now mass-produced in China, a little bit in some other Asian countries. And it's actually very challenging in Central Asia to find non-Chinese fabric.
Same in Africa, the exact same thing. Africa was a textile powerhouse that traded with Europe silk, that they would collect wild silk and weave the silk, and it was traded to royalty in Europe. Really, before the slave trade started, they were already trading the highest quality cloth at the time that they could get their hands on in Europe was coming out of West Africa. So they have this long tradition and history of textile production, and it's pretty much almost all been supplanted by Chinese copies now, where unfortunately local businessmen in Ghana and Kenya, and they see like, oh, well, we can just have this made and sell it at a cheaper price, and you know, everybody thinks it's the same anyway. And a lot of times, even in the selvage on the fabric, it'll say made in Nigeria or made in, you know, Ghana or but it's not. It's most of it's made in China. There are only a couple that I know of. There are only, you know, a handful of textile mills still running in Africa, and it used to be probably hundreds. And so all the textiles we carry are all, you know, hand woven on a loom, you know,
right.
old-fashioned way.
I remember one of the early products at HoonArts that I brought in were what are called pamiri jurab. It's slipper socks. It's big, thick, crocheted with a special crochet that isn't typically done. It's a stitch that's not done in the U.S. To be worn in the very cold climate of the Pamir Mountains. They're very colorful, very distinctive. And I wanted natural wool yarn, and I was okay with some dyed and some natural, and it took some time to find ladies who were willing to work with natural wool instead of imported Chinese synthetic yarn.
Oh, yes.
Because the Chinese synthetic yarn is cheaper, easier to work with, and it's more readily available.
We have a similar, in most of the basket making, they're able to collect local sustainable materials to make natural, you know, baskets. But South Africa, the Zulu wire baskets, sometimes referred to as telephone wire, but they're most of them are not actually made out of telephone wire anymore. We pay a lot of extra money to have the wire made in South Africa, employing people there to make the wire, and they can use recycled materials whenever they're available. They make them lead-free. There are still other you know, groups and weavers that aren't in our group that will use the Chinese wire because it's cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't look as nice, I don't think, but also apparently we've heard that it has lead in the coating, so that's not good for the weavers to be handling, and it's not good for people here to be handling either.
Yeah.
But it's cheap, so some people will use that, so we don't. We pay extra. We have only local made wire that we use. So yeah, there's a number of things like that. There's another case where natural dyes are a disappearing art form around the world.
Yep.
Basketry here in the Southwest, I spoke to a famous basket weaver here, and she had 2 baskets as samples at the Indian Arts Market in Santa Fe one year. They were the same pattern, the same size, the same materials, but one of them used commercial dyes and one of them used natural dyes that she had collected and made herself. And the natural dyed basket was double the price.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so hard to make those natural dyes. So we have some groups like in Uganda where they're still using natural dyes, and we're paying extra to ensure that they continue using natural dyes as long as they have sustainable sources for the plants. So a lot of the weavers now will actually grow cosmos and marigolds and madder root, madder plant, and indigo. They'll grow it in their own gardens, and makes a nice, interesting garden there. But those are the materials for their natural dyes.
Yeah, I remember a conversation with one of my textile designers in Tajikistan, and I got very excited about the idea of doing some stuff with indigo. And she laughed at me and she said, "Ricky, we'd kill for indigo. We can't get indigo here. It's simply not available.
Not available.
Nobody's growing it, and the cost of importing manufactured natural dyes. I mean, that's not the right term, but
yeah,
commercially produced quantities of natural dyes, that the cost is utterly prohibitive."
I tried to do a project one time. This is more than a decade ago, but we wanted to use organic natural dyes and take them to Ghana to have them use natural organic dyes. They only use commercial dyes there. Despite what anyone ever claims, if you go there, you'll see they only use commercial dyes. They seem to be dyes that are imported from Germany into Nigeria and then broken down into smaller bits and then sold into Ghana from there. But a lot of people claim they use natural dyes. They don't. They don't have. It's semi-arid. They can't grow materials there to make the dyes, so they use commercial dyes, which that's okay. But I wanted to do something different, so I thought I'm going to get natural, organic, like fair trade dyes, and I'm going to take them to Ghana. So I talked to the owners of the company, and I don't remember the name of it now, but it was a company, the one that makes organic, natural, fair trade dyes, and told them my idea, and they just said, no, it can't be done. We can't do the quantities. You'll never pay the price. And then shipping it to Africa, this is insane. Like, they just didn't even want to have any part of the idea. Yeah. So sometimes although I don't design, baskets, sometimes this is part of that input. Like, well, if we could do that, that's a good idea to do that. Mm-hmm. But it has proven impossible. Yeah. So you kind of do the best you can in each country with what with what's culturally appropriate and what they're used to doing and what they want to do. And if they're using natural dyes, and you can encourage them to keep doing that by paying them extra, there you go. That's a good thing. So we have a lot of countries where they do use natural dyes, and then there's some countries where they're just not available.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit now, sort of a retrospective. You've been at this now a long time. And what would you say is your biggest satisfaction over the years, and how you've seen yourself grow as an individual?
That's a tough question. My biggest satisfaction every day when I come into the office and work is I know that I'm directly helping and affecting the lives of these folks in Africa that I work with. And I know that in a lot of cases, we're the only international buyer. We hear these stories over and over. I was in Kenya and Uganda in February and January also. And over and over, I kept hearing, you're the only person that lets us set our own prices. Everybody else dictates a price to us, and we have to take it or leave it. You're the only one that's, buying from us outside of Uganda, for example. So you're the only one that pays us a good price, because the local folks in Uganda, they haggle on the price too much. They don't want to pay a good price. So I sleep very well every night knowing that I'm doing everything in my power to help as many people as I can. And I always wish I could do more, but then I always think, I am doing everything I can, literally. So, and I think, how have I grown as a person? I think, especially going back to the very early days, it's hard to remember back that far, but especially going back to the very early days. And I think part of this is just maturity. When you start working in Africa when you're 19 and now approaching 50, you have a better level of maturity and empathy and understanding and all of those sorts of things. So I feel like now, especially, I have a much better relationship with the people when I go. And one of the things, honestly, that has helped me with that, and this is just in the recent years, is I started weaving my own baskets. And it gave me another level of appreciation for how difficult it is what they do. It gave me also the ability to sit and weave with them, actually weave with them when I'm there, and make that connection on a very personal level. Before, when I would go to Africa, they always ask, "Oh, you must stay. We'll eat. We'll weave baskets. You must stay with us." And I would always just say, "No, I can't do it. I don't have the patience. I don't know how to do it. I got to get on to the next village." It's like more business, the business of doing business. And trying to, go to the next village and help those people also, but not taking the time to sort of really just sit and hang out with them and weave baskets. So I think even just in the most recent years here, I hit another level of sort of maturity and empathy and understanding. I just started weaving my own baskets 2.5 years ago, and I found that I absolutely love it.
And for those of you who are not in the basket weaving community, Cael does these amazing, teeny tiny little baskets that are just astonishing. And they've won all kinds of national awards. It's, I like to say, I knew him when. I knew him before he was a basket weaver.
Right. Well, I don't know. I'm not very self-reflective. That's just not in my nature very much. So I guess that's probably my best answer I can come up with there.
Oh, that's great. So is there anything aside from COVID-19 where everything is keeping those of us in the fair trade world awake at night?
Yes.
Outside of the special circumstances of COVID-19, is there anything that really still keeps you awake at night, terrifies you about running Baskets of Africa?
Yes. About almost 10 years ago, I hired my first employee, and I've pretty much been terrified ever since then. I have all these people in Africa, thousands of people in Africa depend on me. So that is very sobering every time I stop and think about it. Like, wow, every day I have to do the best I can to represent them here, to sell their baskets, to ship their baskets as quick as we can, to offer the highest levels of service, to represent them to the highest degree possible. Because if I mess up, there's thousands in Africa that literally could go hungry or not have a source of income. So that's very sobering, but I've kind of gotten used to that over the last years. But then when hiring employees, now I have 4 employees, 4 part-time employees, and it keeps me awake sometimes. Like, how are we going to make the payroll? How are we going to, take care of the people here in a fair trade manner, just as we do in Africa? Mm-hmm. And not just fair trade, but beyond fair trade, doing what's right, human to human.
Right.
In Kenya, we were just looking at some stuff. I made an error on a social media post, and someone pointed it out to me, and I started doing some more research on facts and numbers, and I found, we're paying 16 times higher than minimum wage for baskets. So that's the right thing to do. The right thing is not to pay minimum wage, because nobody can live on minimum wage. So,
right.
We pay beyond minimum wage to our employees and have paid time off and retirement match. The only thing, unfortunately, I haven't been able to get done is any kind of health insurance plan. That's beyond our reach at this point. But luckily, all of us, including myself, we get health insurance through our spouses.
They're handy for lots of reasons.
Yes. Honestly, my wife's a teacher, a school librarian, and I couldn't do this without her, because she provides us with the health care, and she provides us with stable income, which this is not necessarily stable income. It's primarily, heavily Christmas weighted. It's a holiday. Yeah. Retail is really a holiday business, and then you kind of make it through the rest of the year. So I couldn't do it without her. I couldn't do it without my mother-in-law's support. My mother-in-law, whenever I get in a bind, she comes in and helps out, financially also. And
the first bank of family.
Yeah, exactly. But they all understand the mission and what we're accomplishing here. And the goal is not for me to make a bunch of money. The goal is supporting the people and their families in Africa. So with that, I just have tremendous support from family and friends, and it's really really touching. So the thing that keeps me awake at night the most now this week is the shipping problem. Shipping from Africa. What's going to happen with that?
So generally speaking, as a small business owner, and particularly one working with small producers overseas, it can get really stressful. And the lack of control can sometimes just be overwhelming. What do you do to keep your sanity?
I don't know if I actually do a very good job at keeping my sanity. You know me. You ask my employees and my wife and my family, they probably say I'm insane. In fact, and you know this too, that being in the fair trade business where you're really doing the right thing for the people that are producing the products, if you're really doing that, it's tough to have a good business model. So people assume like, oh, you must be making a lot of money because you're sourcing in Africa. You must be making a lot of money because you're sourcing in Central Asia. It's not business as usual. It's not a normal business. Nothing about it is like your gas station. It's every day is unstable, and you're stamping out fires. You're trying to figure out or understand some new issue that you never thought of in 29 years. In 30 years of dealing in sourcing in Africa, I never had this happen before, but that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
The things where this has never happened before, and now what do I do? That's like every day with this kind of business.
So what do you do to get away from it all and just quiet your mind?
Now it's basket weaving. Oh my gosh, basket weaving is an amazing calming thing to do. It's so repetitive, and you have to be so focused just on the basket as you're creating it that you don't have much room in your mind to do anything else except just kind of be calm. So, a lot of times in the evening, if I'm watching TV for an hour, I'm weaving a basket in front of the TV. And then at the end of the show or the end of the movie, I have no idea what happened. It was just noise in the background because the basket weaving it takes quite a bit of focus. And it really is that repetitive action, I think, actually does help to calm my mind. And it's taught me this new level of patience. So when I have issues come up, the basket weaving itself has taught me, I don't know how else to put it, a new level of patience and determination. Because even in basket weaving too, you look at a basket, like especially the type I do, but a lot of baskets, if you look at them as a basket weaver, you can see that weaver did something that you've never seen before. Like they're inventing it as they go. It's not just that you know how to weave a basket, so now you can weave baskets. The baskets I make, every time I'm making a basket, I'm trying to do something I've never seen before that maybe hasn't been done before. So you're inventing it as you go. So you get lost.
Inspired me that the next time I visit Central Asia, we were planning on our tour in 2021. I think that's probably ambitious. It may get pushed back to 22 or maybe even later, depending on how long it takes the economy to recover. But you've inspired me. The next time I go, I'm going to take my own embroidery materials and sit down and embroider with my embroidery ladies in Tajikistan.
Yes, definitely. It's really a wonderful experience. A really kind of like I say, it takes your connection that you have to the producers to another level, a deeply personal level when you're creating things together.
Yeah. So last question. Well, two questions. If you ran into some crazy person who told you that they wanted to start a fair trade business,
I'd probably tell them what I told you. Good luck, number one. That's a very noble cause, and it's great. But what I remember when you first were getting started, I said, I should tell you that I lost money for the first 7 years. The first 7 years I was doing computer programming on the side and, database systems and websites, and I was putting money into the company. And I had a lot of people tell me I was crazy. A lot of people were like, why are you doing, Cael? Why are you doing this?
It's interesting. I've never met another group of small business owners who are so committed to continuing against the advice of all the people who know how to make money, because the mission is more important than the long-term mission is more important than the bottom line.
It's especially hard when you go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting or you go to something like that. People just don't understand where you're coming from, because to them, so many people in the U.S., it's all about the money. And so I would say, I think I was about 6 years in. No, I was even 5, 6, 7 years. You know, those last years where I was almost breaking even. But my CPA, we're doing the taxes, and the CPA just shook her head. She's looking at me and she said, "Don't you ever want to be able to have your kids go to college? Don't you want to ever be able to retire? You have to stop this. You can't do this." And I was like, all right, well, I guess we need to find a new CPA. So we found a new CPA.
And you just keep working until you find something, a model, a system, build systems that eventually work. I tell my own friends, it's not like I can change products,
Right,
or have my Central Asian products produced in Mexico because the production costs are cheaper.
Right, exactly.
You have to work with what you've got, and the commitment to building the market and providing a support system and structures. You just keep going.
Right, exactly. Well, then the challenge for me, the biggest challenge really is the employees, that transition and the overhead. I would almost advise someone who's starting a fair trade business to try not to grow too big. I know that's anti-fair trade. Your capacity building is one of the tenets of fair trade, but the more capacity you build, if you're still paying the people really well for their work, and you're trying to cover overhead of, like, I have a warehouse now and 4 employees, then you can't compete basically price-wise with people who don't have those overheads. So the first 9 to 10 years, I was on my own. And actually, after I hit year 7, where I was, losing money every year, those several years where I was on my own and I had a small facility, I didn't have air conditioning or heating, which in Albuquerque means that inside this warehouse, it wasn't even insulated. Inside the warehouse would be over 120 degrees in the summer. Oh. And in the winter, if I left my water bottle out, it would freeze solid. But you can't do that when you have employees. That's a violation of labor laws. But when you're by yourself, you can do stuff like that, keep your costs really low. And I actually did make some money for a few years. Then the overheads are the biggest challenge, because as frugal as you are, you still have to pay the rent. You still have to pay the employees. There's set costs. No matter how much you sell, it doesn't matter if we have 3 bad months because of a pandemic, we still have to pay all those lines. We didn't lay anyone off. We kept everybody paid. We were very lucky and very thankful that we were allowed to stay open, because we social distance every day anyway in our warehouse. You've been here. It's a pretty big place, and there's very few of us. One of our employees always works from home, so there's never more than 4 people here. But during the height of the stay-at-home orders of the pandemic, we were down to only 2 people at a time here. And then we would pass each other. 2 were leaving while 2 were coming. Mm-hmm. So we kept everybody working. But that's the tough thing as you grow.
Yeah,
not go for that temptation of, like, well, I can save the money if I just tell the people in Africa I'm going to pay them less, or I'll just not pay my employees as much. Well, the employees here still have to take care of their families too.
Right.
that's the biggest expenses, is the cost of labor in the producing country and here. So, but that's the reason for the business to exist. So I'm not willing to make those compromises. And so that's the biggest challenge, is balancing that, and then having hopefully a few dollars left at the end of the year, which I can use.
I think starting a fair trade business and running a fair trade business that survives, it's a lot like being a parent. People try to tell you in advance
how difficult it's going to be.
How difficult it's going to be, and you think, oh no, it's just because they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Or I can, I have the benefit of their wisdom, and I'll be able to do it more efficiently, and I'll be able to avoid the mistakes. And nope.
No, you just have to figure it out as you go. And the extra challenge also is like in what you do and what we do here at Baskets of Africa, which is different from every other company pretty much, but even some fair trade companies, is we don't have any factory production. Mm-hmm. Like there's weaving centers where the ladies come in from their own homes, and they congregate to meet and discuss and take orders and pay payments, but there's no central production. Everybody's out in their village, out in their home, making things. So you don't have any control over, like, if it's clothing, for example, I don't know, clothing's done in a factory. So it's a fair trade factory, but it's a factory nonetheless. So you have a supervisor there that can kind of keep an eye on everything that's happening. Mm-hmm. You can't do that.
Yeah, I was shocked to learn that there are such things as giant cutting machines that cut out an entire pattern. Just, I had no idea. Not, because my artisans use scissors.
Exactly. So yeah, my artisans are out picking grass and picking cosmo flowers and boiling them in water with a special kind of black salt that they dig at the shore of a lake to set the color in the raffia, or they're drying raffia. It's unbelievably inconsistent, but mm-hmm. I think that's the beauty of any handwork. That's a hallmark of handwork. If somebody looks at something and points out, oh, this looks like an error, it's like, no, that's the proof that this was made by hand.
Absolutely. Yes. Last question, and I don't think I've ever asked you this question before. If someone wanted to learn more about African culture, African art, is there a book or a movie or a documentary that you think would really be a good, authentic introduction?
Actually, the movie that comes up over and over again throughout my 30 years of doing this is The Gods Must Be Crazy.
I love it.
It's a great movie. It's quite, accurate to, and that was a specific, tribe, the San people, and it's a specific area, but it's very similar. So here's an example. On this trip in February, in Uganda, I was out on a community walk around the community. So there was a gentleman and a sister from the community that took me around and showed me, like, this is where we wash our clothes in the river. Actually, that was a lake. Yeah, in the lake. And this is how we put little sticks in the water. They had these little sticks that were, like this big around, poking in the water. And what are those for? Oh, that keeps out the crocodiles when we're doing our laundry. And I was like, I don't trust those sticks.
Oh my!
We've been doing our laundry here for, forever. We always have done our laundry here, and the crocodiles know not to come here, because this is our space where we do our laundry. But anyway, the one sister, the girl, asked me a couple of questions. We're looking at the sunset, which was amazing, and she asked me, through the translator, do you have the same sun that we have here in America? Is it the same one, or do you have a different one? And the common question I've been getting for 30 years also is wrestling real? The WWF type, you know, the, the guys in the costumes in the ring, this real? So it's Africa, the gods must be crazy. There are parts of Africa and things and conceptions and beliefs and that are still very similar to a lot of those little pieces today. You know, everything is different. On the flip side, I had a lady in the shop here before the lockdown, right before I left for Africa in January. And I said something about, you know, well, I'm going here and then I'll take the highway up here. And she's like, they have highways? I'm like, yeah, of course they have highways. What do you think? And then she's asking like if they have electricity and how do you talk to them? I was like, I talk to them on their cell phones. They have cell phones? I was like, oh my gosh. So part of our mission, and I think part of probably every fair trade company's mission, is education. No, Africa is not a country. Africa is a continent of maybe 54 countries, depending on how you count countries. There are places that may or may not be countries. I don't know. You know, the Western Sahara, I don't know. Some people count it as a country, some people don't. Somalia, you know, when the central government only controls about 5 square blocks and the whole rest of the country is not under anyone's control. I don't know if that's a country or not. There are lots of places like that. But so education, everybody, one of the most common questions I always get, oh, you're going to Africa. You must speak, do you speak African? And then I have an opportunity for education about how they speak thousands of languages in Africa. Uganda is smaller than New Mexico, and they speak somewhere around 80 languages there.
Wow, I had no idea there were that many.
Yes, those are the big ones. Then you get out to dialects, where sometimes people who speak the same language, but they're different dialects, they may not even understand each other. So in Africa and places like Uganda, Ghana, you know, where there's so many different cultures and languages, so dense, linguists go there and study these things, and they can't figure out, is this a dialect or is this a language? They you know, it can't really even be counted how many languages there are. So I love that opportunity for education as well, and to talk to people about how they live, that Africa is not what you've seen in the movies necessarily. And yes, they do know what Coke bottles are. Coca-Cola is a dominant capitalist force in Africa. Coca-Cola is everywhere in Africa.
Yeah, I love the education aspect.
I've learned a lot from you. I didn't know anything about Tajikistan, Kazakhstan,
well,
Kyrgyzstan.
Over the years, the first question I'm always asked is, where is Tajikistan?
Right.
It's like, I might have heard of it vaguely, but I have no clue where that would be. Right. And then if I say Central Asia, you can see the gears whirl.
Where's Central Asia?
and you still have that Central Asia. What would that be? So
Right.
I have my little speech down. Well, Tajikistan is just north of Afghanistan, west of China. And then it's like, okay, I sort of got the quarter of the world that it's located in. Right, exactly.
You have to be a pretty good geography buff to know where Tajikistan is. Yeah. That's how it is too, like Lesotho or you know, Niger. People don't know where these places are.
Yeah.
So it's a very good, you know, 29 years now I've been able to, you know, educate people about any kind of little aspects of Africa. You know, you talk about lions and they think lions live in the jungle. Well, no, lions are not the king of the jungles. They're the king of the savannas. It's all grassland where you're going to see lions. You don't see lions in the jungle. So there's lots of things like that that are great to educate. So I don't know. I would say just pay more attention to Africa. We don't learn much about Africa in school. We don't.
Yeah.
You know, we're pretty American centric here, so just pay more attention when you see things about Africa. Look at it, and it's very interesting. It's you're going to learn something interesting, no matter what it is about Africa. It's going to be something interesting, and maybe. Okay.
Well, I think we can wrap this up now, Cael. I really appreciate you taking this much time out of your day to chat with me, and I think the HoonArts fan club will be fascinated to learn more about the African side of fair trade. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ricky. It's been my pleasure, and that is one of my faults, is that I can talk about Africa and baskets forever. you have a hard time stopping me.
Well, I have the same problem when I'm talking about Central Asia.
Yes.
I tell people show and tell is my very favorite part of running the business. Yes.
That's how you can tell we love what we do, though.
Yeah. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.